Everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Todd. I am the marketing manager here at the Uniform Solution, and we have an amazing guest here, Janel from Authentic Retail Results, who will be helping us sort of decode the modern consumer and help us as, uniform retailers understand how to meet them where they're at. So Janel, thank you so much for joining us, and would you mind giving us a little bit of an intro?
Of course, Todd. Thank you so very much. Thank you for having me. Thank you to you and your colleagues at Uniform Solution for sponsoring this webinar. This is terrific. So my role, I am an independent retail business coach. So what that means is I partner with independent retailers, many of them in the uniform vertical, and I help them to operate their businesses more efficiently and more profitably. Part of operating more efficiently is, of course, great conversations like this one and figuring out exactly what the modern consumer really values. You know as well as I do, in these very changing times, that it seems like, a consumer wants a different thing every second day. So to have an idea of what we're actually seeing out there, and what my clients are observing and what consumers are really wanting is a really important conversation.
Awesome. Well, I'd love to hear it. So where should we start?
Well, I guess kind of overarching is like talking about how there's a bit of uncertainty out there right now. I feel like that's a fair statement. Would you, what are your thoughts?
I mean, well, you're in Canada, but obviously you see what's happening in the US. There's a lot of complexity around tariffs, inflation, the costs of everything rising. So some big challenges there.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know what? That's very similar to what we're seeing here. And I work with clients worldwide, and it's actually, there's just a lot of uncertainty everywhere. So how does that uncertainty, change the shopper's behavior? Well, one of the things that we're seeing is consumers they're waiting longer before they're actually making a purchase, right? They're doing the research, they're trying to figure out, they're weighing all of their options, right? And just to make sure that ultimately when they do make that purchase, that it is the right thing for them. Speaking of the right thing for them, what makes it the right thing for them? Well, a lot of the time, consumers they're in a way, they're more price conscious, but it's almost like they're more price aware, right? Because they can do all this research, and it's everything is just at our fingertips on our phones, right? We can be laying in bed and do whatever research that we want, but they still want that quality and that durability. So it's like in their minds, they want the reassurance, like, well, this thing lasts, right? So another thing that we're seeing too is there's, among this more thoughtful purchasing, there's also, they're buying fewer wants or fewer kind of accessories or extras, right? So how that translates down to retail is we really need to, in our stores, be training our team on that product knowledge, on the accessories, right? On the add-ons, and why these things provide so much value to the consumer and how they're going to really make the life of the consumer better, be it a product that's going to, give them ease, save them time, or if it's something that's quite frankly just going to bring them a whole lot of joy, right? So those are some of the things that we're, kind of seeing right now with respect to how that economic uncertainty has changed shopping behavior. And one thing to note is, I find this very interesting. A few months back, there was a study by the, National Retail Council, and they found that consumer perception, or actually this study may not have been National Retail Council. I don't want to misspeak and misquote someone, but it was an important research organization. And what they found is consumer confidence, so perception, was some of the lowest it's been in a very long time. That being said, that same month, consumer spending was actually up 3%. So there's so much out there that's just perception. It's like, I think that there's this horrible, scary economic situation happening out there, but that's actually not the reality.
Interesting. So, one thing that I've kind of been noticing, and it could be kind of like a generational shift, is that you're seeing maybe people are buying less things, but they might be buying nicer things, right? That's sort of like buy nice, buy once type thing. Is that kind of how you're sort of amalgamating these different trends?
Yeah, good question. And, it depends on the customer, right? It depends who you're selling to, because, quality is really, really important, right? Where there is definitely, there are people out there, a lot of them, who, just like we were saying, they want to buy quality. They don't want to have to, buy this thing over again in, a month or a year or whatever it is. But you think about too, there's a different sort of mindset happening with specifically younger consumers, and that's like the vintage trend, right? As people are, it's not so much in the uniform industry, but we're seeing this retail wide where, the vintage industry or buying, I like to call them previously loved things is a really interesting trend. And that comes comes along with the conversation about quality and purchasing something once, right, rather than buying a whole bunch of littler things that are kind of disposable.
It's nice to have everything in your house that has like a nice place,
Oh my gosh, yes.
So, but without being too cluttered. So I can imagine that, and also people being more price conscious for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's interesting too, because it does depend on who you're selling to, right? Are you familiar with the product adoption curve, Todd?
Not very much. Mind telling me a little bit about that?
I do not claim to be a technical genius. So this is a slide from a presentation I've used previously. So the question always comes back to who are we selling to, right? When you're asking the really good question about, are people wanting, like one really quality thing, or are we wanting lower price point things that are replaceable? Depends who we're selling to. So this is the product adoption curve, and you can see it's a bell curve, right? At the beginning, we've got these innovators. So the innovators, I like to talk about them as those are the people that wanted the new iPhone yesterday, right?
Yeah.
That is not me, right? And by the way, I can be an innovator when it comes to one classification of shopping, and I can be a laggard in others. Okay. So for example, for me personally, anything like a phone or anything that has batteries, plugs into a wall, I'm definitely a laggard. I don't care. I don't even know what iPhone I have, right? But when it comes to things like apparel that fits well, that I feel comfortable in, that I can work all day in, shoes, right? Same story, that I can wear to work because I'm on my feet, a lot during the day. I'm very much early adopter, early majority kind of thing. So talking about these different sort of groups of people is very generally speaking, innovators, like I said, those are the people that wanted the new iPhone yesterday. They don't care how much it costs, right? They want it. It's brand new, whatever. Early adopters, they are a little bit behind the innovators. They love the new stuff. They're not really a price sensitive group either. They want what they want and they'll go get it, but they'll get the whatever iPhone suits them. It doesn't have to be the brand new one. Excuse me. The early majority, you can see this is like a big chunk of the population. So these are the people that they're aware of the new trends, they prefer the new trends, but they actually are cool with getting a couple of things on sale. They'll wait a little longer until something becomes, goes on sale or is a more reasonable price point before they actually make that purchasing decision. Then the late majority, these are the people that come into your store and, they'll get the things that they need, but they prefer to get them on the sale rack if they can. And by the way, that's not a bad thing. We need the sale customer in our stores because they clean out the sale items and it gives us room to bring in new, fresh stuff. Lastly, we have the laggards. The laggards are, they're definitely that sale customer. They rarely buy something full price. It's typically a sale item, a clearance customer kind of thing. And anecdotally, these are often some of the trickier customers to work with in a store. Knowing what it's like to work in retail, those ones are somewhat trickier. So when you ask the question about, are people wanting one quality item that doesn't need to be replaced, the innovators, the early adopters, and a good chunk of the early majority, that's what they want, is one quality item that, they don't have to spend their valuable time reshopping, re-researching all this stuff in order to get, a replacement very frequently. However, the late majority and the laggards, they don't mind doing that research. They don't mind, having items that they have to replace, etc., periodically. So yeah, it's kind of interesting when you look at the consumer behavior in that capacity.
Yeah, wow. Okay, that's a really interesting way to think about who is buying when. And in terms of like laggard, is it for a new brand or for a new product within an existing brand?
Good question, all of it. This product adoption curve can be applied to every product, like you said, within a brand, whether it's a new, let's say it's a brand new fabric of scrub, or it's a brand new style. Like remember when the elasticized bottoms came in? Like that was like very cutting edge for the industry. Now it's like, how do you get them without? Like it's very rare. But so when it comes to the laggards, really it depends on the product, right? Is like I said, I'm a laggard when it comes to anything electronic. I just don't care about that. I would actually rather just never have to buy electronic things. That being said, when it comes to comfortable apparel or basically anything for my dog, that's where I'm early adopter, that kind of thing.
I mean, you sort of brought up some interesting things. One of which is, like the laggards, they're always looking for discounts and deals. That's like an interesting way to think about it. And so we're also kind of talking about like value versus pricing. What are your thoughts on discounting versus not? Like when's a good time?
Man, we could talk about discounting for days and days and days. Discounting is so important. Most retailers hang on to their merchandise way too long. Okay. Discounting is really, really important. So another element of what I do a lot of is called merchandise planning or open to buy planning. I help retailers figure out exactly how much of which category of inventory they need to have in their store and when in order to achieve the sales goals that we set. Okay. A big part of that, markdowns are calculated right into that. We expect to take markdowns in order to what we call bribe customers to make a purchase with us. It's inevitable. And when I say most retailers hang on to stuff too long, it's most retailers. And so how long should we be hanging on to things? It depends on the product again. I know it's like such a funny answer, right? Is like, well, it depends, but it really does. And what I mean by that is when we have like a core collection, let's say we have a black V-neck scrub top that's the same one that's, over and over and over again, it's reordered. Well, that one may, we may only need to put really wacky sizes, right? The outliers and sizes on sale in that one, right? If we're just going to keep on repeating it, but there's seasonal colors, there's seasonal prints that are not as popular, right? And those ones, for example, if it's holiday season and let's say we brought in some cutesy Santa socks, well, anything with a Santa Claus on it should be on sale before December 15th, right? Because that has no value to anyone after Christmas, right? And people want to be able to wear Santa coming up to the holiday season. So we got to give them time to do so. So markdowns are incredibly important. And there are so many ways to do markdowns that are not, what's the right word? Not kind of slimy, right? And there's ways to do them so that you're actually getting more margin in the end.
One of the challenges too, I mean, I'm sure you'll probably get into it in a sec, is how do you make sure that you aren't giving money away for free? If someone's going to pay full price for it, but then you give a discount, do you make discounts contingent on certain things? Or I don't know, one of the big questions also is around average sale volume or like sale. It's like, can we have accessories with this? So yeah, so I threw kind of a lot at you, but.
No, this is such a valuable conversation. So the first piece of it, so what is the first piece is kind of how do we know when to put things on sale? Is that kind of the first
essentially half? Yeah, or like how do you do it in a way in which you don't just give money away for free?
Yeah, good question. And you know what, that is the idea. And way back in the day when I started in retail, that was me too. I'm like, I'm not marking this down, whatever, like no way, Jose, like this is perfectly good, I bought it whenever. Now really it's interesting because the easy answer for me is our open to buy plans calculate that all out for us. So we just have that information at our fingertips. But a good rule of thumb is once we only have a couple sizes left in something, that's time to consider selling it, marking it down. And once we only have, like if we ordered something, like if we got 12 units and we have 10 left and it's been, 90 days, that was our customers just not choosing it. So it's time to mark that down. Like I said, anything that's roughly 90 days is like the max that we want to see goods in our store, because that is about 3 months, right? And it's kind of a season. When you think, assuming we have 4 seasons in a year, that's kind of a whole season, right? And so we want to have a fresh store at least every season for our customer, because the easiest way, and you alluded to this with average transaction volume or average dollars per sale, the easiest ways to make more money is to sell more stuff to the people that are already coming in and to get those people coming in more often. Well, what brings those good, I want to say good customers, but the customers that are really your top 20% of your revenue, what brings them in more often? Fresh stuff. Like how often do you go into a store, even your favorite store? Hey, store manager, great to see you. Show me what's old. Everybody always says, what's new? Because that's what they want to see is the new stuff. So, it depends on the product category. It depends exactly what the product is, but keep your eye on stuff because, I have clients that if something hasn't sold in 2 weeks, or excuse me, I should rephrase that. I have clients that will put something on sale, even if it's been in the store only 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah. So
do you advise them not to? What's your, yeah, that seems pretty fast.
No, not at all. It depends because in those particular stores, the average turn is so fast, right? And they have their customer coming back so often. Are you familiar with the store Zara, for example?
Yeah.
Zara turns their inventory 14 times a year.
Wow.
14 times. You try to go into Zara and you probably don't spend a lot of time there and that's okay. But you're not their target customer necessarily. But Zara, they really capitalize on that fear of missing out, right? And your consumer really I know if I go there and I see something that I like, I have to buy it today because darn right it's going to be sold out if I wait even 2 days to come. Oh, I'll see if it's still here. No, that late majority laggard mentality does not fly at Zara. Right? If I see something that I like, I have to get it now because it's a brand new store on average every about 3.5 weeks. It's incredible. Wow. Yeah, right. It's incredible. Insane. Right. So imagine the logistics behind that, right? That's a well-oiled machine. So that's where I'm saying some of my retailers, they have stuff that's been there for 2 weeks and they look at marking it down in that time frame. Now, there's other things to do besides markdowns, right? You can reach out to your vendors if you have a product or an item that's a slow mover. Communicate with your vendor, right? And reach out to them and say, hey, this isn't working. Can we swap it out for other merchandise, for immediates, or can we, send it back for an account credit for next season or whatever kind of partnership they're willing to give you, but rely on your vendors first. Absolutely.
You're kind of getting to something I was curious about, like loyalty, bundling. How do you kind of increase that average ticket sale and as you said, don't feel too sleazy in the process?
Yeah, you know what, and that's such a good question, and something that it's been a really common theme for a lot of my clients is we run reports from their point of sale, like Uniform Solution, and we look at salesperson performance. And I'm not saying single out individual salespeople. We don't have to do that. Let's just look at the averages for the store. And if we want to increase average transaction volume or units per transaction, like I said earlier, how do we most easily make more money or bring in more revenue is sell more stuff to the people that are already coming in. So you mentioned bundling and you talk about loyalty. Well, those are two amazing ways of doing it. By the way, having a markdown or a sale rack or series thereof or baskets or however our merchandise is displayed, that's another easy way to add on, right? Is by suggesting sale merchandise, because it's kind of an easy target sort of to train the team is to begin with the add-ons. But the first piece of add-ons and kind of getting people to buy more, really, the first part of that begins with the mindset of our team. And you nailed it when you said kind of that kind of uncomfortable sort of sleazy feeling. We have to ditch that. And we have to think of it as we're not adding on items that this consumer does not want and does not need and will not value, right? We have to think of it as we are saving them time, which is a very important currency for most of our clients. Think about who we're selling to, right? These people really, they work when we're asleep and they sleep while we're working, in many cases. So time is a currency to them, right? So when they can come into our store, they also probably work in a pretty high stress environment. So if they can come into our store and have this incredible experience of, oh, this is a really relaxing place. And I come in and they know my name and, they remember my size, or maybe they remember what I bought last time. That's just such a valuable way to capture loyalty. But in order to also sort of tied into that is this adding on piece, right? And if I'm serving this person as a salesperson, right? Or, what do we call it? Like stylists or,
Mm.
professional, uniform stylist kind of thing. But in order to serve these wonderful valued consumers, I offer them the complete package, right? Like recently, I bought a couple pairs of shoes, ironically, from one of my own clients. I got them home. I was all excited. I put them on. I'm like, perfect. And now it's winter. I'm just going to spray these with, the leather protector, whatever, and I'll be on my way. And then I realized, oh, I don't have leather protector. Why didn't they ask me if I needed leather protector, right? Because that would have been the easiest, add-on right there. And I, as a consumer, felt disappointed. I loved the shoes and I'm so excited about the shoes, but I'm like, crap, now I have to go out and find leather protector. And so I can't wear these today like I wanted to. Now I have to wait a couple of days until I can find them and spray them and blah, blah, blah. Right. So
Mm.
as like the stylists, the salespeople on the team, we have to change our mindset. We are not adding on and being slimy salespeople. We are providing the consumer with the best possible experience because we're completing, selling them the complete package or giving them everything that they need to really enjoy this product that we are selling to them, right? And that adds value to their lives.
Mm. I love that. Okay, so saving time, like being personalized. With the personalization thing, you're kind of also getting to, how can they remember those folks? Like, how do you, yeah, like what are some tips and tricks that you
Yeah,
have used to sort of keep people to
so
continue
good.
coming in?
Such a good question. And you know what? This is such a valid question. It's funny because I personally, like, I'm really good at remembering faces, but names, oh my goodness. It's like embarrassing how often, I see someone and they're like, oh, hey, Janelle. And I'm like, hey, friend, great to see you. Right. What you're asking is really, really important. So what we used to do is in our customer fields, in our point of sale, we'd have a little note, right, where we would say, with their, remembering their name coming into the store. That in and of itself, as I got to know people, that just naturally kind of came. But I also would just ask my colleagues, hey, do you guys remember her name? And the funny thing is, even if you don't necessarily remember their name, you're going to remember something about them, whether it was like, she tried on all of the tall, scrubs that we had in last time, or maybe she was specifically looking for a certain color, or maybe you remember the hospital that she or he, works at, or was there a specific product that they really liked? So even if you don't remember their name, even if you walk into my store and I recognize your face, but I can't say, hey, Todd, there's going to be something, right? That we can relate on, or that I remember about you. And it's weird because I specifically will remember every pair of pants you tried on and what size. And often I'll remember your kids, like if you tell me about their graduation or what event you're going to, I'll remember all of that strange stuff, but your name, nope. Don't know why, that just fell right out of my brain. So yeah, so those are some of the ways. Now, another thing is if you have a loyalty program, that's really, really valuable and an easy way to, connect with someone often. And, that also, it brings them in. And it also, like I said, it helps bake their names, kind of into your brain as well. So yeah, oh gosh, we could also talk forever about loyalty programs.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Okay, cool. Well, I mean, are there more things you want to kind of chat about to wrap that up before I ask the next series of things? Or yeah,
No, you just fire away. I think this is such a fun conversation, and we take it in so many different directions about, what consumers really value these days.
and it seems like, okay, so you're bringing up some really good ones, like what's new, what's interesting, how to keep people updated. I think loyalty and rewards programs can go a long way. I my experience is like there's a few pairs of jeans that I really like, and I really love Joe's jeans, for example. And so I'm always kind of curious when those are, being sold, if they're going on sale or anything. Like, so, I think that as AI tools and different things can be more aware of people's behavior over time, they can give them more tailored things at scale. That's like probably the biggest superpower I'm finding with AI is if you can get customizability at scale, that would be really cool. So hopefully, down the road we can give some folks suggestions on how to do that with outreach.
Yeah. And you know that's such an interesting point is even small retailers, this, even a conversation like that is kind of like, oh my gosh, that is so overwhelming. Like, how do I even do it? Well, then don't do it today. But you know what? At some point, that is going to become very realistic in your business, right? So just be prepared that at some point, using AI on a big scale, hey, that might be baked into your point of sale software, right? So yeah, it's exciting to see what kind of things. And there's like virtual change rooms. This has been out for years and years, right? Where you can, well, it used to be upload a photo of yourself, but now it's just like, it's like on many, what Amazon I'm sure has it. I think Wayfair has it, where it's like, view this, if you look at for a product, it's like, view it in your room. Like you have this AI tool where you can scan your room and they'll, park your kitchen table that you're shopping for in it. So it's becoming way more standard and easily accessible. So
Amazing. Okay, the big one is, one that everyone's always kind of curious about. That it's been mentioned so many times, but maybe just a little refresh on how in-store brick and mortar can compete with online.
Yeah. Oh gosh, this is another one that's such a big topic. But it's interesting because again, talking about the e-com customer versus the in-store customer, often, not always, often they're a very different customer. Right? The in-store customer values what we were talking about earlier, that in-store experience, right? They want to come in and have that, either relaxed or energizing or interesting experience where there's something to talk about, right? There's something that excites them, something that delights them, something that makes them feel good, right? I said there's a lot of feelings and emotions, right? The e-com customer, they just want their stuff for cheap and fast. There's not a lot of feelings involved in that. Right? So again, it comes back to the psychology of who are we selling to, right? And knowing that e-com customer, they're not always they're not always kind of laggards by any stretch of the imagination, because again, these are often the people that got the new iPhone yesterday, right? But from a perspective of consumer behavior, they tend to not value the interaction, the human experience, right? The feeling when they come into a store, that's not as valuable to them as that in-store experience. So how do you do well with, brick and mortar versus online? You control what you can control, and that is the experience in your store. Ensure that every single person that you invite into your store has an outstanding experience every time.
Awesome. I love that. Talk about controlling the controllables, in our past conversations, you've talked about that's kind of all you can do, sort of a Zen Stoic philosophy thing. What about with regards, we talked a lot about uncertainty, what can be done with regards to tariffs? A lot of people have been talking about these. I don't know how that's another giant, topic for macroeconomics, but what are some quick thoughts on that?
Quick thoughts on tariffs. I have a really unpopular opinion on tariffs, and that is, can you control Amazon? No, you can't control Amazon. So unfortunately, independently, we can't control tariffs either. So what we can do is, again, just like you mentioned, we can worry about our 4 walls. And if we have multiple locations, our 12 walls or however many walls we have, right? And so we focus on that in-store experience and the consistent, experience when it comes to every time we communicate with our customer, be it social media, texting, emailing, phoning, whatever it is. So we really, a lot of my clients were looking for alternative vendors. We're, tightening up ship windows. There's, moving to, we have some of our open to buy budget is left for immediates. We're constantly sourcing more than we ever have before. We're communicating with our vendors, right? A lot of vendors out there, like everybody's in the same uncertain position and everyone's experienced increased costs, right? So we have, it's just kind of a shakeup in the industry. It's much like we saw about, a few years back with, the pandemic. We all just had to pivot, and find new ways of doing things. And it's kind of a similar sort of thing. There's just a shakeup going down out there. And so it's forcing us to innovate, and it's forcing us to be, efficient in our businesses kind of in an unprecedented way. and the retailers that are focused on ultimately providing that value and what the customer really wants, those are the ones that are really growing in these times.
Hmm. Well, I love that. You've given a lot of really awesome tips so far. I'd say probably the ones that stick out to me is just like really knowing your customer sort of demographically and how to meet them where they're at is obviously very significant. And then controlling the controllables. Yeah. Any other final kind of quick tips? I know we're kind of running up on time a little bit here,
Yeah,
but
it's all good. No, I mean, there's so much to consider, but ultimately, the most important thing is who are we selling to, and give them, just like what you said, give them what they want, right? We can't fill a store with things we love. We have to fill a store with things that will sell. And the things that will sell is what our consumer wants. So know your customer and serve them in, the way that they need to be served, and that is by bringing in what they want when they want it and providing that exceptional experience to them.
amazing. Awesome. Well, Janelle, thank you so much for these hot tips and tricks. And for everyone who wants to connect with Janelle, is there a good way to reach you or a best method to reach out?
Thank you. Our website is authenticgroup.ca, AUTHENTIC group.ca. You can email me, Janel at authenticgroup.ca, and I am here for you and ready to connect and answer all your questions. Thank you so much, Todd, for taking the time and inviting me and having this fun discussion.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much.